Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about the turned and stitched seam finish technique. And so what this finish is good for is when you are trying to reduce bulk in your garment, but you still need to clean finish the seam allowances, where you don't want to put a serging, you don't want to put a binding, such like that. So we're going to start by putting right sides together. And I'm going to use the either 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch seam allowance. Whatever's on your pattern is fine. You don't need a lot of extra room to turn under this seam allowance. But I usually do increase it maybe 1/4 of an inch. So again, right sides together. I'm forming a plain seam. I'm going to stop it here. It's a little long of a piece, and I'll just cut it off. So you see I have my X's there for my back side, so that's how I know that I have my right sides together. Just trimming that off so you don't have to watch me sew as much of a seam. Okay, so I did my plain seam with my right sides together, and I'm going to open my seam. So spread them open with my fingers for a little bit, and then I'm going to take my tool and just, excuse my hand, sorry, roll them open. And then you would be doing this, of course, with an iron. I just want to expedite it for you guys. So now my seam is set, and I'm just going to take, you see how I just flipped it over? I'm grabbing one of the seam allowances. Hopefully you can, I'm trying to make it so you can see it in the camera. I'm going to fold under one of the, I'm going to start with one side, 1/8 of an inch or even smaller if I can of the seam allowance to the back side. So what I'm going to be doing is stitching over that and keeping it nice and flat, and this does not add a lot of bulk. So just you can take it to an iron and press it under if you want, but if it's on a complete garment, it's not really realistic to take all your seams and bring them up to the iron. So I'm just going to use my finger. If it's a fabric like a silk charmeuse or something really slinky that you are having trouble with, then you will have to bring it to an iron, or even use that little tool you just saw me to get it started. But I'm using muslin, and muslin is user friendly, as I always say, so I don't really need to do that. Okay, so hopefully you can see I have kind of finger pressed under the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to grab it from there, turn it over, and I'm going to stitch this down. So just try to use like an edge stitch. If you have an edge stitcher attachment on your machine, that could be helpful too. Or maybe a top stitching foot if the fabric's a little bit thicker. But I find it's just as easy to just turn it under and use the regular foot and glide it between the toes of the foot and the edge of your fabric. And I do have to go a little slow with this. See, I'm just using my finger to help continue that fold, stay in place. Just kind of holding it with my right hand and guiding it with my left, because I'm right-handed. Okay, and now you can see that it's really close to the edge. Hold on, let me get it in the, turn it over, get it in the camera for you. Really close to the edge, and that's how it looks on. So from the inside of the garment, you don't see the raw edge of this at all. It's the raw edge is facing towards the garment, and it'll stop any continuing fraying from happening, which is the whole purpose of the seam finish, and it adds no extra bulk like a binding would do. So I'm going to go ahead and the exact same process. I'm going to do the other side. Just finger press it a little bit to help guide it under the machine for me when it's time. And notice that it's going towards the back of the garment, but I'm going to flip it and sew it from the top of the seam allowance, just so I can control how it looks when you're actually looking inside the garment. If I sewed it from the other side, I may move off the seam a little bit, or I just won't be able to see what I'm doing. So just continue the same exact process as you did on the last one. And this is one of my favorite finishes, honestly, because it doesn't add bulk. But it is tedious, takes a while to do this, but really any finishing does, so. Okay. And that's about it. Just going to remove it from the sewing machine. And flatten it out for you. Oops. Hopefully you can see that. See, it's really pretty. So if you looked inside, and you could use contrasting thread just for a detail, or if you had matching thread, you wouldn't even see the line. Of course, I use contrast for you guys to see when I'm sewing. And then I'm just going to go ahead and press it out a little bit more. Press the edges down if they needed to. And that's it.